Hey Lyle, what are you doing here?
I'm in here for an axle upgrade.
An axle upgrade?
Yep.
Well, you, my boy, are in luck. All right, guys, we are going to dive in and get started on this mini grave digger monster truck. So these are the axles that I've got for this project. This rear axle is a Dana 44, believe it or not. It is extremely narrow. I got it from a company that made forklifts and stuff like that. So it was a new old stock axle that they had, and it was just extremely narrow. So I first had it in a buggy that I built with a big street bike engine. And although with this suspension that I put on it, it articulated very well. It just was too much unsprung weight for a fast buggy. It'll be perfect for this little monster truck. And then up front, we've got a Suzuki Samurai front axle. And then here I've got a spare front housing that a friend hooked me up with. Because what I'm going to do is cut this front Suzuki housing. And you'll see that on the passenger side, it has an axle shaft that's much shorter than the driver's side. So I'm going to cut this driver's side down to the same length as what would be required for a short side axle, and just run two short side axles. And then you can see I kind of got this extra housing turned around from the other one so you can get an idea of how wide it would be. And I believe that if I cut it down and use two short side axles, I should be pretty close to having two very narrow axles that are pretty close in width that'll be perfect for this grave digger monster truck. The most intimidating part of this project for me is narrowing this axle. Narrowing an axle housing is something I've never done before. So I think the proper way to kick off this project is to do this most intimidating thing first. So the first thing I'm going to do is tear this apart, pull the axles out of it, and that way I can measure the long side axle, measure the short side axle, come up with the difference, and I know how much I need to take out of this long side of the housing. All right, let's get started. So I got both axles laid out here. Used a square to kind of square off one end, touched both ends of the axles there, put a square down at this end, got a tape measure in there, and it appears that the shorter axle is 13 inches shorter than the long one. So in theory, I should be able to take 13 inches out of the long side of this housing, end up with an axle that's 13 inches shorter overall, and it should be very darn close to this narrow Dana 44 that I have in the rear. This should be a perfect setup for the little monster truck. As I mentioned, cutting down this housing is pretty intimidating to me, so I decided to ask for some help. I called my buddies over at Skye's Manufacturing. If you're not familiar with Skye's, I'll put a link to their website in the description. They're your source for Toyota Solid Axle Swap kits, or if you want to put more modern Super Duty axles under an older Ford, they've got the kits to do that for you. Anyway, I gave them a call. I explained to the guys what I was trying to accomplish. I told them, hey, I've got a Suzuki Samurai front axle housing. I want to narrow it by 13 inches. Where should I start? They told me, don't sweat it. I'll send over my best guy and the tools you need to get the job done as fast as possible. I'm thinking, man, it pays to have friends in the industry. But what exactly did Skye send over? A t-shirt, a Keystone cardboard cutout, and a great big old sun hat. How is this supposed to help me narrow a Suzuki Samurai axle? So obviously I called the guys back and asked them, what gives? How's a t-shirt, a sun hat, and a cardboard cutout of Keystone going to help me narrow this Samurai axle housing? I could hear them laughing on the other end of the phone, and then they had the gall to say, no, 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 no. Trust us, just put the t-shirt on, put the hat on, and tell Keystone what you need done. He'll get it done faster than you have ever seen it done before. Well, I already got the shirt on. I guess I could put on this silly hat. And I'm supposed to ask a cardboard cutout to narrow this axle for me. Alright, here it goes. I know they're going to be laughing at me for years over this one. Keystone, will you please narrow this Samurai axle housing for me? Please? Oh God, this is embarrassing. Turn off the camera. What the? Dang, Keith, you are smooth. That was pretty fun. I'm shocked that it actually worked. Be sure to check out Skye's website. I'll put a link in the description below. When you contact them, tell them Keith Stone sent you. Alright, I guess I'll show you now how I actually narrowed this Samurai axle housing. The Motomule name came from a product I used to make several years ago. It was a small trailer that you could pull behind a dual sport motorcycle. This is a weld fixture that I made back when I made those trailers, and I used it to build the center cargo section of the trailer. And it was kind of nice because I could move these things towards each other and further apart to make different length cargo sections. And then I would, bolt the pieces in here, tack weld it, and then it would spin around and I could weld it from all different angles that I needed to. I figured this was the perfect way to hold each end of this axle housing in the same location after I cut it. So I can mount it in here at its full length, go ahead and cut it, slide these two things together, that orientation will stay correct, and I can weld it back together in this weld fixture. I went ahead and held the axle housing up here and marked some new hole locations that I went ahead and drilled into this old weld fixture. So now I theoretically should be able to bolt that housing up here into place and cut it, slide it together, and weld it back together. Alright, I've got the axle housing mounted in this weld fixture, so it'll keep the ends oriented correctly. I kind of wire brushed the general location where I'm going to cut. The first step will be to take a measurement across the entire width of this thing now that it's mounted in the fixture. And then after I cut it, I can slide these ends closer to each other and make sure that I've got an exact 13 inches that I've removed. worked out even better than I had imagined. It holds that thing perfectly in place. So I can cut it. I took a measurement across here before I cut it. So now we can slide this together, take that measurement again. I'm a little big. I was cautious in how much I cut out. So I'll do some grinding to bring those in right next to each other and get this overall dimension to the 13 inches less than what we started with. So, but I'll just continue doing some grinding, then I can tack this thing together, get my measurement just dialed in, and yeah, like I said, I am stoked how well this thing worked. Okay, I've got the two pieces pinched together. I've got my 33 3/4 dimension that I was looking for. So everything's ready. I got my ground on there. I'm gonna go ahead and tack this thing up and then fully weld it. And the two pieces are one. We now have a very narrow Suzuki Samurai front housing. All right guys, check it out. We have got a nice narrow Suzuki Samurai front end to go with our really narrow Dana 44 rear end. Together, they are going to look sick under this mini Gravedigger monster truck. All right, while we're kind of looking at this thing, I wanted to answer a few comments that I got on the previous video and give a few shout outs. Obviously, I am very appreciative to Grind Hard Plumbing's help. My YouTube channel would not have near the audience it does without their involvement. But this particular Powerwheels build is not meant to compare to the ones that they build in any way, shape, or form. You know, obviously it's starting out as a Powerwheels, but this is for kids. It's going to have a hopefully a 16-horse industrial motor, and it's going to be geared really low. It'll actually be four-wheel drive, so we could run over Grind Hard Plumbing's Powerwheels cars, but it's not going to be near as fast or crazy as their builds. Same thing with Chris over at Rather Be Welding. You know, he's starting out with this same exact body, but his build is completely different. You know, he's putting a Ninja 650 motorcycle engine in his, and it'll be built for an adult. It'll be fast and crazy. Again, this is going to be a four-wheel drive crawler monster truck for kids. I'd also like to give a shout out to a newer YouTube channel. Mike over at DIY Motorsports is putting together a pretty cool YouTube channel. I'll put a link to his channel below in the description. He built his daughter a pretty crazy little miniature Banshee. He's also building a toddler bed to race against mine. And I don't know if he's posted anything about it yet, but I know he picked up a four-wheel drive quad and is going to build a four-wheel drive Powerwheels for his daughter as well. So do yourself a favor, go check out that channel. I think it's going to be one of the more popular ones here in the near future. It feels great to have what I consider to be the most intimidating part of this project done. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. You wouldn't want to miss any of the future development of this mini Gravedigger monster truck. Please share this video on all forms of social media, and I will see you in the next video.